Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Characters at Large presents CALtalks. This is episode 2. I'm joined once again with Joel E. Sanchez and Kenny Fleeger. You guys want to go ahead and say hi to everyone?
Hello, everyone. Glad to be back.
How you folks doing?
Perfect. So, we are going to more or less continue our topic a little bit from episode 1. We're going to be straying away from the superhero genre in this one. We're going to be talking about some other comics that we think are really good reads. These ones aren't necessarily going to be, like getting into comics as your first comic book, but nonetheless, they are comic books that we really enjoy and think that you will too. So first up, Kenny, go ahead and tell us what you brought.
'Tis I. And with me today, I've actually decided to go with my favorite. It's going to be Saga, published through Image Comics, written by Ryan K Vaughan, illustrated by Fiona Staples. This one, actually, crazy enough, is like 8, almost 9 years old at this point, which is it's weird to think about because it still feels so fresh. I know it's still ongoing, but Saga has had very quickly, upon my finding it, taken a special place in my heart. With this story, it is outright stated, even on Image's website, that it's got heavy inspiration from Star Wars, which I mean, most of us have grown up with Star Wars anyway. But it also managed to take a little bit of fantasy roots every here and there. So it's never like restrained to one kind of aesthetic, and. To not go into any spoilers, to sort of give a little rundown on this one, Saga is much like, I don't know, Fast and Furious. It's a story about family, It's as sci-fi centered as it is, it can be really down to earth with that, There are 3 sort of main character groups that you end up following through it. One of which is a married couple, Alana and Marco. Featuring their child Hazel, and the whole special deal with that is they are 2 different races whose planets are currently at war with each other, and typically they all just hate each other's guts, right? But they actually found this Romeo and Juliet style kind of love, and are just trying to keep themselves and their now family safe as they journey across the universe, and it's a lot of fun. On the other side, there is a bounty hunter who is one of my favorite characters, and his name is The Will, where you're going to find that there's this really cool concept of all these different bounty hunters that go by like concepts as names between The Will and The Stalk and so on and so forth. And he is this like Bruce Willis typecast kind of character, this like almost stoic, gruff kind of guy, but has this heart of gold as he saves this orphan girl. In one of my favorite scenes, actually. To preface, this story is a little bit more adult than what we have mostly talked about so far. It does get a little bit gory. There's some nudity. But yeah, so he saves this little girl. And everything he does, especially with his little sidekick, Lying Cat, which is just a big cat that says when you're lying. And everything he does is just really heartwarming, when he's not stabbing people in the face or something. And then lastly, you got another of my favorite characters is Prince Robot IV, and his whole deal is that he's trying to stop the whole, like, word of mouth about this family that has started between 2 warring races, because it could be ugly for the press and whatnot. Him trying to hunt them down and stop them from existing, basically. And he's this really cool, still down to earth sometimes, but mostly like not money driven, more like trying to keep his place in royalty. Until he finds like other means of drive, like he goes through a lot of development throughout the whole thing as a character, and it's just a really cool concept. His race of people, they all have TV heads, and whenever they're dreaming or whenever they have like really strong emotions for something, you know, their thoughts appear on the screens, and it's just a really fun way of visualizing a lot of different emotions and things. And his hand turns into a gun, so what's not to love there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds all pretty neat. I just think about the character itself, and I mean, not to keep it hidden, but I've also read Saga all the way through. Thanks to you, actually, the one who introduced it to me. But Prince Robot's design, the whole robot kingdom is it's so weird, but like it fits the narrative, and it fits the universe that Brian and Fiona are just built for each other, or with each other rather.
If the idea of Prince Robot's father, because usually they're like CRTVs or something, the idea that Prince Robot's father, the king, his TV head is a giant flat screen TV, and he's just this stout, short little dude. If that visual in your head or on screen, whichever one you're doing, doesn't like at least get a chuckle out of you, I don't know what you're doing wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I've also read, I believe, the first 5 volumes of Saga. The story is just phenomenal. Mm-hmm. It really hooks you in. When I went to pick up the first volume at one of our local comic shops, the lady who is checking it out says, I've gotten so many people into this story by just this one sentence. It's Romeo and Juliet meet Star Wars. And at that point, I was like, yeah, I'm hooked. I'm sold. Give it to me. I'll buy it. Because it's such an intriguing... Because there's magic, and there's technology, and there's just all these things that don't sound like they would mesh, but somehow, man, it meshes so well. It comes together and just makes an exhilarating read.
It really speaks to Brian K. Vaughan's writing that he can not only take on 3 different, essentially, stories at the same time with the 3 different groups, but to really manage to make things feel tense, consistently, to manage to make things feel fresh consistently, to handle characters and their dialogue in ways that just feel real. There's a lot of humanity in a lot of things that go on in it, in between, the gore and all that. There's those more not you see every day type of things, but a lot of it, even in fiction, feels real. And
you put it. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, yeah, you're good.
No, I was going to say, no, you put it really good. It is a look inside humanity. Mm-hmm. It is a really deep look inside. And that's something that not a lot of comics kind of explore a lot. It's, supervillain, punch supervillain. But this one, it's a lot of, like, some politics, a little bit of ethics, and just...
Oh, yeah, and, like, the social commentary, too.
Yeah, it's a lot of... Everything is black and white, but... a lot of these characters operate in the gray, and that's really cool to see. And
going off of that, like straying away from that, the story and all that a little bit, the art. Oh my god, the art! Like I talked last time about how Jim Lee is my favorite artist, and Fiona Staples has climbed, like skyrocketed up that list in the years since finding this story, just because her art is so good. It is a style that seems simple, but if you were try to copy it, I can guarantee you would have a tough time. It is this sort of not necessarily messy, but it is this organized simplicity, I think, is how I'd put it.
It's almost rustic.
Yeah. It's this the use of colors, that there's typically always something like warm or more pastel-esque, pastel-like in its look, and the contrast between them. Every cover art is phenomenal. Just the way she places everything, the way she positions characters, their poses and all that. The lighting and all the different backgrounds even. Backgrounds can really exemplify what I'm trying to say with that it is an organized simplicity, where there might be like a ship off the distance, but they don't really focus on putting too much detail because it's off in the distance, but it still gives that shape. You are informed on what's happening, even if there might be less details in some parts, And a big thing also that people probably won't even typically talk about is the clothing. I struggle trying to figure out when I draw how clothes wrinkle and shape and fold over people's bodies, but like the clothing always just looks so good. The folds and capes and when they're wearing jackets and how the different cloths and whatnot would react and move based off what they're made of. Fantastic. I love every second that I spend looking at her art.
Yeah, she's a phenomenal artist. And like you said, like the art in general is good, but the cover art that she does for each volume or issue, it's just clean, it's pretty, it's very much its own style. There's no one really out there right now that has a similar art style to Fiona Staples. And
plus, given the like setting, the fact that it is a sci-fi and also some fantasy kind of genre with it, it manages to it uses that to its advantage in its settings. And Brian K. Vaughan gets to write a bunch of very fun settings, and Fiona gets to draw those very fun settings, including the cover art never looking the same as another one. You know, you've got like a nice sort of down to like homey environment with the ship that they do call their home for a while there, and then there's like, to contrast that with a lot of browns, there's ones that have like bright oranges and yellows. The first volume's cover art featuring Alana and Marco, there is difference between like the orange and like dark browns of Marco and Alana's clothes versus like the green of her hair, and it's so good. I cannot gush about it enough, really.
What's kind of interesting is I've heard a lot of talk about how Saga for Image is like their second lightning in a bottle, their first being The Walking Dead about Robert Kirkman. And like I got to The Walking Dead after it was adapted to the TV show produced by AMC. But to me, like, I believe that Saga honestly is the reason why myself and many others were able to actually find a home in comics. Like there was no messy continuity behind it. It was an original story that you could pick up with chapter 1. And once you get all the way through chapter 54, and you get to wait like everyone else has for 2 years now, it's like an experience like none other. Like if in my humble opinion, if there was really to be a comic that hands down should be recommended to anyone trying to figure out what the comics medium can do for storytelling, they should pick up Saga.
And that's the thing, is like, Walking Dead was Lightning Ball, and Walking Dead is a very good comic series. I enjoyed Walking Dead a lot. Saga somehow manages to take this concept of like family, you know, that The Walking Dead also did have a focus on, and just really, really like let it explode, you know? And funny enough, Saga, the first volumes of Saga did actually outsell Walking Dead. The only thing is that Walking Dead managed to get that TV show deal, and that's why it's more of a household name, you know? I would bet you $1 million that if like HBO agreed to take on Saga, then that would start to become a household name too.
It would become the next Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly.
But only if it's animated, though. If they try to do this live action, unless they have like Disney's budget, yeah. I think they would have to degrade the story in some way to be able to make it possible for TV.
I agree with you there. I think animated is the best way to go with it, just because of how unique that art style is. I feel like it can still be pulled off in live action, given you have the right team. But that is a big if, you know?
So here's like another thing. The series started like what, in 2012, right?
2012, yeah.
Yeah, and it's been on hiatus since like late 2018, because Fiona, you know, she had, I believe her first child. And, you know, serendipitous to the story, has been taking care of her child, and we have heard nothing about when this series will return other than the first 54 chapters is the official first half of the story. Mm-hmm. And God, I'm pulling my hair out because I'm rereading it right now, and I dread getting to that last chapter and being at the same spot where I was 2 years ago, just waiting for more.
On that same topic, I dread just getting to the end. Period. I know that there is always an ending place for stories. The idea that this story will end saddens me. The idea that there will not be more Saga for me to read at some point is something that I do not want to think about.
And that's what marks like a really good series. Mm-hmm. It's a series that you don't want to end, because there are a bunch of series out there that you enjoy and you look forward to the ending, but the really good series are the ones where you're almost dreading the ending because it's going to be the end and you don't want to have to go through not being able to continue this story.
And furthermore on that, just the ability for them to make you laugh 1 second and then potentially make you cry in another is also a testament to how good it is as a story and how good the writing is. Because, not to give spoilers and curse either, the opening line is opposite end of the pendulum from the last line of of where we are currently, of where the comics have been able to be released, again, since it is on hiatus. There is such a stark contrast between the two tones that are demonstrated from the opening lines and the ending current lines that I also just really wanted to bring up that like fact, that idea that it is able to have such a range.
Something I want to highlight, it's the last thing I'll talk about Saga, because God, we can go all day if we were allowed to.
I legitimately can go all day.
Yeah.
Ryan K. Vaughan is probably one of the most prolific modern comic writers to date right now. I would say he's kind of up there with Al Ewing and, well, Jonathan Hickman's getting up there now as well, thanks to his tenure with Marvel, and Tom Taylor. Anywho, sorry, Connor. Brian K. Vaughan's work with Vertigo, using, I think, publishing Why the Last Man and Ex Machina. I think Ex Machina is the Vertigo imprint, actually. But if you pick up any of Brian K. Vaughan's books, whether it be like Pride of Baghdad, which was a graphic novel, or you do Why the Last Man, like I just mentioned, which is about to get a adaptation for TV. I don't remember what studio is doing it. Or Ex Machina, or Paper Girls by Image. You can't go wrong with him. He just hits so many different genres, and in the end, you won't really necessarily be disappointed with just picking up, whether it be like the first volume or like the first issue. Man, how do I get his credentials,
Right.
God, no kidding.
But yeah, that was Saga. Before I talk forever about it, because I didn't even get into like my favorite characters or anything, I feel I should hand over the spotlight for someone else. So please take it from me.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you want us to go back to Saga, because we'll gladly dedicate an episode to it if there's demand for it.
Yes, most definitely. All right, so I will take over the reins so graciously passed from Kenny. And I'm
stolen from me.
I'm going to be talking about a story that I picked up very recently, as in like the last week and a half, I believe. Really wanted to get something new, and I went to the local comic shop and was looking around, and I was predominantly looking for either Wild West or medieval, and I came across a story called East of West, which is written by Jonathan Hickman with Nick Dragotta, doing the art. And I was not disappointed. This story is really freaking good. One of the first things that you kind of read, and I have it written down here, it's in quotes. "This is the world. It's not the one we wanted, but it's the one we deserved. The four horsemen of the apocalypse roam the earth, signaling the end times for humanity, and our best hope for life lies in death." This story is a sci-fi dystopia mixed with apocalyptic and biblical allusions. Basically, around the Civil War between the Union and the Confederacy, the war never ended. It continued on until 1908, when a meteor crash landed on Earth, causing the battle to come to a standstill, and it crash landed right in the dead center of the United States. Because of that, the factions signed a treaty to end the war and investigate this almost alien-like crash. So the world then split up into essentially 6 new factions, 6 new areas, between the Union, the Confederacy, the Endless Nation, which was the native tribes, the People's Republic, which is the Chinese outcasts, which is now referred to as the House of Mao, as in Mao Zedong, the Kingdom of New Orleans, which is where the African slaves disbanded from the Confederacy and formed their own place, and in true Texas fashion, the Republic of Texas.
Heck yeah. Yeehaw.
And dead center in this, in that crash site, is Armistice, which is where the treaty was signed and the ground zero, and is now basically a holy ground for a group known as the Chosen. What happened in this story is that I believe there were 3 different prophecies, and once the prophecy was spoken, the person who spoke it died. And it's not until these 3 prophecies are put together into what the Chosen have called the message that they know it's essentially a prophecy that is yet to be fulfilled, bringing about the end of the world. There are only, I believe, 7 people who know the message. They know what's going to happen, and they are doing whatever it takes to get to that point where it becomes the end times. And this is kind of where the story picks up. You follow one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. You follow Death. He is essentially on a mission for revenge, and he is alone. He's not joined by the other 3 horsemen. I won't get into a lot of the plot. The 3 horsemen come back in a gap of 10 years, but they are not joined by Death as he decided to stay on Earth. So yeah, this story it's a sci-fi western where you follow literal Death as he goes on revenge for the people that wronged him. And it's really, really good. It's a testament to Jonathan Hickman as a writer. He writes some really phenomenal stories, and East of West, I think, is pretty widely considered to be one of his best works, if not like his magnum opus. It's really, really interesting.
So, have you read anything by Jonathan Hickman before this?
I mean, bits and pieces. I've read some of his Fantastic Four run, but I think that's about it.
Bless. Dude, let me tell you, I guess to let the fans know, I am a uber X-Men fan, and
that's an understatement.
Yes, I guess so. Jonathan Hickman currently is taking over the X-Line, or has taken over the X-Line since like late 2019, and my oh me, dude, the ability for this person to be able to plot such a grand narrative, like I can't imagine what he had, even like in the first volume of East to West, like what kind of seeds he planted for you to find throughout the rest of the 10 volumes.
No, Hickman really, at least in this first volume, he answers a question and then raises 5 more. There's so much that you don't know because you're thrown right into the middle of this. Within that 10-year span between when the other 3 horsemen being war, conquest, and famine, between them being gone and resurrected, you don't know what happens. All you know is that something happened to Death that made him snap, abandon the other 3 horsemen, and go out on his own mission to take revenge. And it's crazy, it's wild, it is not for children. I will tell you that. There are some pretty gruesome panels in there. And speaking of the panels, Nick Dragotta, holy cow, man. His art it's a lot more in line with more modern times. Very clean edges, but the way that he lays out his panels is inspiring. There is, for instance, there's a scene where Death and his two followers walk into a bar, kind of like a bad joke. But he goes into the bar and he's trying to get information, and the bartender's not having it, and Death kind of just snaps his fingers, and his two henchmen kind of just attack the whole bar and kill everyone in there. And instead of Dragotta like showing you what happens behind Death as he's standing at the bar, you see a bunch of like comic expletives like blam, pow, slap, a bunch of that written almost in blood, and it goes on for like 3 or 4 panels, and you just know that this crazy massacre is going on behind you, and you don't see what actually happens until the aftermath, where the entire bar is dead. There's another one where there's a big fight going on, and he has placed essentially a 4x5 grid of squares where you have little snippets from the battle, and then every now and then you get essentially the space of 2 squares put together, so a small rectangle where people are talking, and then it goes back to the battle, and you get to see all of these little scenes from all over the battlefield. That's really, really fun. It really pulls you in. You're experiencing this, and you're like, oh crap, oh that's bad, and you see all this. And then another thing that is phenomenal, and I don't know why I have, at least from what I've read, I've never seen this. In panels where someone is shot, the words blam written in block letters become the panel. So it's arranged almost vertically, and you see the art behind the letters, but it's just this really kind of like in your face, this guy is getting shot, and you see the word of it getting shot. There's no like comic onomatopoeia or anything going on. The panel itself describes what's going on, and it's so cool. Just the way that he lays out his panels is so inspiring.
And I think that's a bit of a thing too, is people are always, keen to point out when something's like copying another thing, but when you manage to find something that's like new, that when you manage to make something that is fresh like that, it's inspiring, It is it points itself out almost,
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like, it's nice to see modern comics pushing for innovation in things even as like basic as panel layouts, because the layout of a page really it sets the pacing of how it could be read, and even just sometimes it sets the tone for a scene. And these are just like the nuances of comic creation that you probably won't think about when you're reading it. You'll just take it at face value for, the end product, if you will.
Yeah, you don't know how much a story benefits from good panel layouts until you see a story that has either mediocre panel layouts or bad panel layouts. They really can kill a scene. It's all about how your eye is drawn from like, left to right, up to down. So like if a panel layout is confusing and you don't know where to go, it kills the pacing of the story, which is why I really enjoyed East of West. Just the panel layouts accentuate the story so well, and it makes it such a good read. And I've only read the first volume, and I am about to go back up to that comic shop and probably get the next 3 or 4. Like, it is that good, that intriguing.
I'm just excited for you to read something by Jonathan Hickman. I adore the man and very much idolize the way he does world building, and I'm interested to hear more about how he built the world in East of West as soon as you have read more.
You will be the first to know, I promise you. And with that, Joel, go ahead and bring us home. What'd you bring us?
Well, I brought to you, both of you actually, and the audience, this book called Eternal that's published by Black Mass Studios. They're not the biggest publisher. They do a lot of like shorter series, usually like 4 issues or most. But this one is the format of a graphic novella. So, what is a graphic novella? A graphic novella is that happy medium between a full-size issue, which is about 48 pages, to a graphic novel, which tends to be 100 plus. Well, this sits about in the happy medium, like I just said. So it's about 50 or so pages. I didn't actually get a count, and there's no page numbers. So it's roughly there. It could be done in one sitting, much like a single issue could, without leaving you feeling that craving for more story, because it's a one and done. Like, you pick up the book, you read everything from beginning to end, and there you go. This book is a passion project between Eric Zawadzki and Ryan K Lindsay. Fun backstory about the piece. Ryan K Lindsay is the writer for Eternal, and he submitted the script to Eric Zawadzki when he was in the middle of working on a project. I don't necessarily remember what project he was working on, but Zawadzki enjoyed the script so much that he took the 24 pages that it originally was and doubled it, just because he wanted to draw out some of these moments that were in the script, because he was doing test pages and realized this would work better if it was drawn out. And thus the page length doubled, and it's definitely was for the best, because you'll see in the story there are just moments with no dialogue, and the art just illustrates the emotions felt, the action choreography so well that if you tried to muddy it with bubbles or narration or whatever, I think it would just be like that feeling when you put salt into something before you tasted it, thinking, oh, it's probably going to need it, and then you realize it didn't. So it's just incredible. Something that shouldn't go unsaid is that the colorist, Dee Cunniffe, really did a lot of the icing on for the art, if you will, if that makes sense saying that. He applied his color scheme, which very much complemented the art, because the art itself isn't uber detailed. It's not basic like a elementary school kid drew it, but it definitely conveys some of the violence that appears in the book, because something I think that's been a common theme for this episode, at least, that every single story we talked about is more mature. Just as a disclaimer to anyone who's thinking they should pick this up for their kid, if there's a parent in the audience. More power to you if you feel like you can. But the coloring that Dee Cunniffe did really just highlights, whether it be the emotions, the violence, or even the weather and the lighting. Especially I'm looking at a page right now where Vith, the main character, she's a shield maiden, is in the middle of a battle between a group of 5 men, and you watch her panel by panel take out the next man after the next, and it's tinted with red because you can feel just whether it be the energy or the blind rage that Vith is feeling in the scene to be able to take on these men without even thinking about whether or not she'll survive at the end. And I think that's just incredible, because all of that again was conveyed with no words, just pure imagery, which again is one of the major things of comics, because in theory, and it's probably been done several times with success, you can make an entire story front to back with no words, and if the art does what it's supposed to, it'll work. And that's just beautiful. I don't really have too much else to say. I highly recommend, again, this if you're looking for something kind of light, not in subject matter, but just in length to pick up, because East of West is an ongoing and it has 10 volumes. Saga is an ongoing, has 9 volumes. So if you're just looking for something, maybe you can pick up and read maybe on a lunch break, or you just want to, read it before bed. Eternal, honestly, is a good book for those type of scenarios.
Yeah, the whole concept of a graphic novella was something that I hadn't heard about until you actually showed me it. And It's hard to describe, especially like physically, because it's not the same size as like your typical comic book issue or volume book. It's like wider. It's almost like like those kids picture books that are more almost like a little bit more square shaped. That's
Yeah.
very much how it is, and it doesn't have like a hard binding. It's I don't know, the whole concept behind graphic novellas is really interesting, since you can, it's not a single issue, it's not a volume, it is a contained story within 60 pages, and that's something that I feel like could be tapped into in like the comic market more, because
Yeah.
before you showed me that, I had never heard of it, and it's super interesting.
Yeah, like I picked this up over the holidays this past year because I saw it was recommended to me thanks to Amazon, and I saw the price. It was, I think at the time, I mean actually it's still I looking at the back of the book, it's $7.99. So like this
That's
book,
cheap.
it is cheap, and not to say that it's cheap in quality. It's just you're paying what you get. You're getting what you paid for, which is a contained story. It's short and doesn't skim on the quality of the art or anything. To highlight what you're getting onto about the format of the book being a graphic novella, Eternal is softbound, using I think it's bound by glue, like most paperbacks are. It's printed in European format because the European format is what they call bande dessinée, which is comics in French for the Franco-Belgian scene. Because in Europe, comics are treated as the art form they should be. Not to get too ranty about that, but it's printed on European format, which is why it's wide. It allows the art to be to take the entire page and to convey even more powerful imagery, because North American comics, I think, fit in, I don't remember the dimensions of the pages, but they're definitely not European format.
Yeah, the whole like difference between different comic scenes in regions is something that always intrigues me, because you have the Franco-Belgian scene, you have your typical Western comics, you have Eastern comics like manga from Japan, and all of them are so different, not only in art styles and tropes but also physically. You have the Western comics that are, I want to say like 6x8, just about, somewhere around there. And then you have the Franco-Belgian, which is in that European style that's wider. And then you have, the Japanese manga that's, in a smaller contained book. It's really interesting to see how the medium changes depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah, and you can chalk it up to just the way each region treats storytelling. The the Eastern scene with manga in Japan and manhwa in Korea and then manhwa in China, like aside from like Korea using more so the digital sphere with webtoons, they kind of just push the envelope on what you can fit in a page. Especially because the manga market, you have mangakas who are sometimes writing and drawing, almost doing the entire book themselves, minus the editing, because they get that through their publisher. And I don't know, like every region, like you said, Connor, it allows them to show their passion in a way that only really works for their region.
So we would like to hear your thoughts, you, the audience, on which of these 3 stories that we brought today sounds the most intriguing, which one you're most likely to pick up, maybe read. We'd really like to hear it. Getting people into the comic industry and getting people into new, whether it be IPs or new series, is something that's so fun about comics in general. So please let us know what you thought, what you'd like to read. And, if you have recommendations for anyone, leave them down below. We'll look at it. People who are watching this video, they'll look at it. Just let us know what you like.
Well, I will say that something, if I'm allowed, Connor, I would like to bring up to our audience.
Go for it.
So, recently, Characters at Large launched a Creator Spotlight series to highlight the creators of the comics that we put through our group. Recently, we released 2 Creator Spotlight videos over the writer and illustrator for our most recent comic, Death of a Hero. So if you haven't checked those out yet, go ahead and head over to any of our socials and take a look at these short interviews with the creators behind Death of a Hero. You also get to hear me pretend like I could interview people.
Speaking of socials, make sure that you check us out on Facebook at Characters at Large. We're on Twitter at cal_stories, CAL_stories. Same for Instagram. And then for Reddit, we have a subreddit, r/CharactersAtLarge. Make sure to check us out. Check our website out, CharactersAtLarge.com. We're going to be posting the podcast there. Any creator spotlights, they're going to go up on all of our socials. Check us out on YouTube right here. Keep checking back. We're going to have new stuff for you, and we're really excited to keep producing content.
Yeah, feel free to give us any feedback as well. We want to improve to make sure that every new episode that we put out for you guys really, speaks to, I guess, you as the audience. It'd be different if we were just making this for ourselves, but we really not.
And with that being said, I want to thank you listening right now. Yes, you. I know I did this the last time, but I want to thank you listening personally. Thank you very much. We appreciate you and your time.
Especially if you're the same person who listened last time.
Yes. We really want you to keep coming back to us. So with that being said, we would like to thank you once again. We hope you have a good night, and if it's the morning, we hope you have a good day as well. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.